Hello, world. This is the Know Your Place podcast. I'm Charles Altendorf, and this is episode 4. On this week's episode, my friend Robin and I talk about what it's like to come of age in Cincinnati. Him in the late 90s, me in the late 2000s. So stay tuned. Hello, everyone. This is the Know Your Place podcast, and we're on episode 4, I suppose. And today's guest is Robin. Say hello to the fans, Robin.
Hi, everybody.
And today we're going to talk about... I sort of led into this kind of a topic last week, but I talked on a much broader scale. But we're going to kind of talk about how places change over time. And I grew up as a teenager. My teenage years I spent in the Greater Cincinnati area, and so did my friend Robin here. Mm-hmm. Except we're separated by a little time. So we'll lead into that today. I moved there now when I went to high school. So I moved there in 8th grade in 2002, and I moved to Florence, Kentucky. Now, a lot of our fans won't know, but Florence, Kentucky is pretty much annexed by Cincinnati.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It's most of northern Kentucky there is considered part of the Greater Cincinnati area.
And while there are people there that rock the UK stuff and are Kentuckians, I suppose, it's not the same as being in Lexington or anything like that. So that's sort of where I moved to. Now, I didn't really know much about Cincinnati before I moved there. All I'd heard of was basically my dad was a soft fan of Ken Griffey Jr. because he liked his dad. So I heard of the Reds, of course, but that was about it.
Well, I mean, if you want to talk like baseball, actually, I've met Johnny Bench.
Oh,
I sold him a computer.
Oh.
Yeah, crazy.
Did he pay you good for it?
No, he paid the normal price.
Okay.
Know? Honestly, I didn't even realize it was Johnny Bench until somebody else was like, "Did you know that was Johnny Bench?"
But you didn't meet Pete Rose.
No. My grandmother did.
Oh,
multiple occasions. She was friends with the LaRose's family.
Yeah. The pizza place.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And she has this excellent story about frozen pizza that I can tell you sometime, but that's irrelevant to this conversation.
So there's that, and then the sort of second thing I knew about Cincinnati is kind of the negative. I had heard about the race riots that happened the year prior to us moving.
Well, Cincinnati's kind of unique, and the African-American population there is actually at about 40 to 42%.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not as large as it is in Milwaukee now.
No. Milwaukee's been going up pretty quickly, but
yes.
Yeah. So, I've went through 2 race riots there, actually.
Oh, you've been through 2?
Yeah, I was actually on Shortvine during the one in 2001.
2001, that's 2001. The one I'm talking about.
Yeah, I was on Shortvine while that was going on.
Oh.
I know. There was really nothing going on, though.
Oh, okay. My parents' friend was actually a cop during the riot.
Wow.
He retired after that.
I can understand that both the one that was 95, I think, was the other one, and then and of course there were a few before that as well. But those are the 2 that I remember distinctly. Just they were all over the news and talking, and things calmed down after that. But.
We actually only moved to northern Kentucky because we were trying to get towards Lexington. My dad had been laid off in North Carolina, and my mom said, "I want to move to Kentucky." And we had a choice between Northern Kentucky or Maysville. And we chose Northern Kentucky because Maysville is just like an hour from everything.
Well, people in Cincinnati kind of look down at people in Northern Kentucky, and vice versa. Like,
right.
there's weird contention in that town.
Oh,
like
I'm well aware.
Like high schools, for example.
Right.
There's like 24 different high schools, and one of the first questions you're always asked when in Cincinnati is,
"What high school did you go to?"
Exactly. So what high school did you go to?
Boone County, home of Sean Alexander, the Rebels.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I right below the water tower. So it was a good high school. We actually we ranked in the upper 70s, low 80s percentile in national tests. Yeah. So it was funny because my high school they built in 1956 to combine all the high schools in Boone County.
Oh, it was a magnet high school.
Well, not really.
Okay.
There were 3 in the county and they put them into one.
Oh, okay.
But then in '92 in the '70s they built Cooper by the airport, and then in the '90s they built Ryle. So it's like it all went full circle again.
I remember hearing about that. But anyway,
So what they did is they were throwing all this money at Ryle because it was the new school. And they were just like they were kind of treating us like the stepchild, even though we were outscoring them at the time. So it was like a really big contention. I mean, the rivalry was pretty intense. Like my senior year, they burnt their name into our football field grass.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And then we stole their spirit stick before they played in the state finals. And it was really intense.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, people talk about high school rivalries and
the college rivalries in the town too. You know, you've got UC and you've got Xavier,
and they brawl every once in a while.
Oh yeah,
I saw that brawl. When was that? 2003 or something, where they got in a big fight. And the benches cleared.
Yeah.
So it's just a wild times in Cincinnati.
I went to actually 2 different high schools in the Cincinnati area. I went to Colerain during my freshman year, and my senior and part of my junior year was spent at Anderson.
Well, if my parents' friends listen to this podcast, they'll probably be a bunch of Colerain alum.
I liked both schools. They both had their own kind of charm, but they both were very not happy with each other. You know, they're opposite sides of the town. Yeah.
It's I guess they're both very large too. Boone County, it's not small, but I've noticed that there's a lot of schools that are bigger. My school was about 1,500 when I was there.
Wow.
So, but we had to play the top tier football bracket, which was kind of annoying.
Oh,
so, but let's see. Anyway, when I moved there and I was in high school, my parents, I guess, decided that they wanted to expose me to the culture. A lot of my friends. Well, I don't know if I guess friends, you know, I know them still. We're Facebook friends. I don't think they traveled across the river as much as I did. See, my freshman year, we decided just, when in Raleigh, we had been to one Oktoberfest thing, but, you know, they're not very German proud in Raleigh, North Carolina. But we had heard about the Germania Society in Colerain Township, ironically enough. So we go up there and we went to their Oktoberfest and we were like, well, these people are Germans.
Well, German. There was a lot of German influx into Cincinnati, especially. It's also known as the Queen City of the West, which is kind of weird nowadays. It's not very west. But back at that point, it was one of the biggest cities to the west. It was also known as Porkopolis. It was the biggest pork producer, and it still is to this day. But a lot of butchers and bricklayers came to Cincinnati, and the town is tons of architecture with brick and mason work. It's really beautiful, really.
Yes.
The Cincinnati skyline is gorgeous.
Oh, I absolutely... my favorite view, this is an inside tip for people. I don't think this is in the travel guides. There's this spot in Mount Adams next to the old... what's the name of that pottery thing? The old Rookwood Pottery building.
Oh, yes.
And there's these apartments there, and they have this big parking lot next to it, and it's like you're on top of the skyscrapers from that spot.
Mount Adams is gorgeous. I love the art museum there.
Yeah,
just a pro tip for anybody going to Cincinnati: it is absolutely free.
It still is free.
There's Van Goghs and Picassos.
It's a great art museum. Anyway, so I guess it was kind of a shock for me how proud people were of being German in Cincinnati because
and the irony of that being is I'm 100% German background.
Yes,
so
I'm in probably like 75% or something like that. Although my family was pre-Germany immigrants, which is kind of different. I'm not from the main influx. But in Wisconsin, it's not that people aren't proud of being German or they're not German. It's just it's not on display quite the same way it is in Cincinnati.
And as we've discussed, I lived in Milwaukee for 6 years, so I've got a bit of your perspective as well. They're more proud of being Wisconsinites than German.
That's kind of just like part of the culture.
Right.
Whereas in Cincinnati, it's like, we're so German, we're going to move back to Munich tomorrow.
They're so German that the Holocaust Museum has a piece of the Berlin Wall.
Right. They're intense about it. And I mean, like, it was so intense. My parents' German club has, like, people who are first-generation German immigrants in it. And second-generation. And that was really unique in World War II perspectives from them.
I can imagine.
But yeah, so it's... it was just so shocking being somewhere where people were so out and proud about being German, which was great. I've really become more proud of my German heritage, but it definitely is a big change. My grandfather wouldn't even speak German in the household.
Really?
So,
well, that goes into cultural thing and how kind of like the Germans that moved into the Midwest kind of just amalgamated with the culture that was there. Yeah.
But also, my parents' German club was dominated by the Bavarian Germans.
Ooh,
so
yeah.
Which that's another.
Didn't the Americans have the Bavarian area after the aftermath of World War II?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which that is a very interesting thing. I don't think a lot of people. The weirdest thing about Cincinnati isn't just that there's German clubs, because everywhere has German clubs. Minnesota does, even Las Vegas does now.
Oh yeah.
But it's that there's 31 German clubs, and they're all tied to special parts of Germany. Like from my parents' club, there's the Donauschwabens that are only Schwabians, and then there's Kolping that's Catholic North Germans, and then mine was the Bavarians, and it's just like whoa.
And speaking of Catholic, Cincinnati is an extremely Catholic town.
Yes, that was another kind of a shocker for me. Although Wisconsin is kind of Catholic too, but it's
not
more
nearly
Lutheran.
as much. I was going to say Lutherans are the big thing there, but the archdiocese has a they're all over the place.
I was so shocked when I went to college. This is so funny. I didn't ever meet this guy when I was in high school, but he lived across the main road from me, but he went to the private high school.
Oh, there's plenty
St.
of those,
Henry
too.
St.
Henry?
The big Catholic one in
yeah.
northern Kentucky. Not Covcath, though. That's the other big one. Covington Catholic.
Yes, Covington.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he, so he was like conservative Catholic, and I hadn't really met those because in Wisconsin, I mean, there are conservative Catholics probably, but most of them are the more liberal kind of Catholics, and he was
they're laid back,
right?
Yeah, no.
And he was like staunch conservative Catholic, and that was a big surprise for me.
Oh yes.
So
my grandmother was a very starch conservative Catholic, so yeah.
I don't think they'd be big fans of the new Pope. I'll put it that way.
No. No, she was all about the Pope John Paul.
Yeah. Anyway, so now that I've sort of gotten into that and talked about my experience, I guess we'll talk about yours a little more and sort of the different neighborhoods you lived in and sort of what it was like. When were you in high school in Cincinnati?
I was in high school in the late 90s.
Okay.
In Cincinnati, so that there was
like a decade before me.
Yeah, exactly. I was done with high school in like 2000.
Now, the thing that I always felt kind of sad about, though, when I was in high school is I felt like the core of Cincinnati was kind of dying the whole time I was there.
I felt that way because I went to high school shortly thereafter. I actually moved to Wisconsin for 6 years and then came back, and the whole town seemed kind of drab in comparison. Then again, I was in a bad place that could be colored my perception on that. I mean, there's still wonderful things about the city, and it's still growing and all those kind of things. But still, on some level, the city does seem a little drab.
The biggest thing that it was just like I covered this in last week's podcast, but Paris I talked about during World War II. It was much like the Gilded Age in the 1800s, where oh, look, we have this high cuisine restaurant, but all of our employees are starving, right? Or and that was almost what it felt like, because we would go downtown, they'd have all the newest plays or all the newest things, or when I was in high school, my teacher took us up to Cincinnati has a Shakespearean theater, right?
Yeah. Shakespeare in the Park?
No, actually, there was a little theater they had.
Right. Okay.
It was right next to an old Italian restaurant.
I think one of the biggest downfalls of the city was actually the closing of its only 5-star restaurant, the Masonette.
Really? You think?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that kind of marked a high watermark.
It's just weird because it's there was all these, I don't know how to describe it. It was gilded. You could tell on the outside there used to be this really high culture side to some things, and then you hear on the nightly news that there's a gang fight between neighborhoods on the city bus, and it's just wow, this is such a stark contrast.
And I've lived in some of those neighborhoods too. East Price Hill.
When I was in high school, there was a big fight between Avondale and Reading. Their gangs were fighting on the buses.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You lived in East Price Hills. Some of my parents' friends have
that was
there.
before I moved here to Bloomington. Actually, that's where I was living. So,
yeah.
That's a hard area, but I never really had any trouble. You know?
It does feel kind of hard. You know, a little harder than other places, but.
The people, for the most part, are friendly, and
You know, I've been to the south side of Chicago, so I've been to Gary as well.
Yeah.
So
I've only seen the south side of Chicago. I've went right past it.
That's probably your best move.
That's what I've heard.
So yeah, I've seen rougher places, but still, you could. I don't know. It's just like you get the Cincinnati. It feels like sometimes there's just like this. There's just some parts to it.
There's almost like an a contention, like an electricity in the air sometimes, you know? Yeah.
But that sort of made me want to progress into another thing here. I will say, though, as much as I loved Milwaukee, and you've probably heard me rant my first two podcasts, I actually think that Cincinnati's neighborhoods have a stronger identity than Milwaukee's.
Oh, by a long shot.
They are so intense.
The neighborhoods in Milwaukee kind of like almost mesh into each other. You don't really get much distinction until you get out to the suburbs, like New Berlin and Muskego and places like that.
Well, my aunt and uncle live in Cudahy. It's in the south there. It's a very strong... They like to point out, we're older than Milwaukee. It's like, okay, all right.
But in Cincinnati, you've got Over the Rhine, you've got Mount Adams, you've got Clifton, you've got Queen City, you've got Price Hill, Western Hills, tons of places.
Well, and the craziest thing about Cincinnati to me is the neighborhood identity is almost so strong that you can't really tell where the boundaries of Cincinnati end. Like, the city limits never match in your mind where you think they are.
It sprawls almost straight to the Indiana border.
Right.
I think it stops.
Sailor Park's the end on one side, and then on the other end is Kellogg Avenue.
No, actually, if you go way out east, actually, it's Mount Washington.
Right, I forgot they annexed that.
Which is, I love Mount Washington. The area is really cool, and it's got it's had a very unique water tower, you know, and they dress it up like a candle every year, too. It's very cool.
But then you got somewhere like Norwood that's not in the city, which is just bizarre. Yeah. And Kenwood's not in the city limits either.
No. Mostly those are, like, higher property values, really, you know.
But it's just so weird because when I was there, because when in Wisconsin, the cities are very set boundaries. Like Milwaukee, it's very obvious where the cutoff is.
And it's very square too, where the city boundaries.
All the cities are very square.
Cincinnati just kind of squats over the tri-state area. It's almost a circle.
It's almost like the boundaries are fluid, you know, which is something very, very interesting and different.
Which
I think is unique to Cincinnati.
I wish I knew more of the history of its expansion and annexing of various neighborhoods. You know, like I'd like to see, like, how did Laughlin become part of Cincinnati, right?
My general gist was, you know, that basically it just used to be everything within the original basin was just the city for a long time.
Cincinnati Valley.
And then they were like, oh, hey, people moved out to other places. And I guess they lobbied to be in back when it was trendy in the early 1900s, and then lobbied to get out in the 60s, you know? So cool. Let's see. We'll kind of mold into other things I like about Cincinnati, and we'll talk about what we like about it some more. I love... So for all the troubles and problems I saw when I was there, Cincinnati loves to party.
Oh, yeah.
They have so many festivals.
Oh, yeah.
It's like there's one on every corner happening all the time.
And they will shut down they will shut down big parts of downtown for it. You know,
Newport,
lots of different
Covington.
Taste of Cincinnati is huge. Yeah.
Some of the West Siders, my parents know, go to stuff like West Fest and
given the Catholic nature of the city, there's just so many festivals, all like spring and summer long. Well, late spring into summer, but you know,
And now my parents' club does a Chris Kindle Mart in November, and they're still partying up to that. And actually, my favorite festival has to be the Greek one in Finneytown.
Oh yeah,
PANEGYRI.
You know,
that is such a circuit.
And then there's festivals to very region-specific foods, like Goetta Fest.
Right, yes.
And most people
actually,
who are
there's
probably...
two of them now.
Oh,
Did you hear about
no,
that?
I didn't. There's two?
Yeah, what happened was Glier's and Covington got in a big fisticuffs. So Glier started hosting theirs in Newport, and Covington kept hosting its. And that sums up Cincinnati. All right, good night, everybody.
No. But the cultural foods in the area. Goetta, just so everybody is aware, Goetta is a kind of loose sausage that is created with pin oats and pork.
It's great.
It is good. You fry it in little discs.
Had it.
Put it in my face hole.
Right, and then of course Cincinnati has that weird style of chili, the Skyline chili.
It's more
Skyline or Gold Star.
Gold Star.
Oh, you're in the minority.
No, actually, I'm in the majority.
I don't know. That must be an age difference.
I mean, well, I'd say Empress, but there's just none of them left.
Yeah, I went to one. They put one in. They put one in Florence a while ago.
Recently?
Yeah.
Oh,
they just opened up.
Well, I know they have their.
There's one in Blue Ash too.
I know they have their commissary, and you can buy Empress chili here or there, and they supply it to various diners. But I didn't know they had a branded.
They were trying to open like a couple stores. I don't think it took off very well. Oh wait, and then there was the Dixie chili down the road in Erlanger.
Oh yeah. Trying to get off the success, but Cincinnati style chili is more of a condiment. It's not like Tex-Mex chili. That's not beans. It's a very kind of smooth meat chili.
Everybody says it's weird when I go somewhere else.
Honestly, from an objective viewpoint, it is weird.
It's started by a Greek guy though. So.
Greek brothers actually, and then they split off and made the various companies. Yeah. But it's got the notes of nutmeg and cinnamon and things like that. It's not exactly sweet though.
I like it on fries with lots of cheese on top.
I like a good coney,
or
a 5-way.
See, that explains probably why you like the Gold Star better. They have the better conies.
That's true. And the fluffy cheese on the top. That's hard to. It's hard to find.
Nobody else does.
I actually worked for Gold Star for a little while too.
That explains everything.
That was my first job.
My friend worked at Gold Star in Crescent Springs.
I worked at the one in Mount Washington.
Yeah,
right next to the Blockbuster. Which
funny story. Blockbuster was going to buy out Netflix.
I know.
And then they were like, no, we don't want to do that.
That's not how that's going to go.
Whoops.
Well, mistakes were made.
All right, so let's see. Is there anything else you really thought was great about growing up in Cincinnati?
The rivers.
You like the rivers?
I grew up very, early. I grew up in the city, so it wasn't just me going to high school there. It was, from an early age, I was living in various parts of the city. I grew up on a much further west side, which wasn't in the Cincinnati proper.
Right.
It was right between Miamitown and Cleves, and we've talked about Cleves a little bit there. Right off the banks of the Great Miami River.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, I always loved having the river vista, which is something I kind of miss here, but at least it's a valley, and we still have plenty of hills, which makes me feel a little more secure. I don't.
Yes, we're in Bloomington, Indiana. If you haven't figured out from my last couple podcasts,
and I believe we mentioned it earlier. So.
Yes, but it's interesting for me. People love the love for the Ohio River. I know people from Louisville as well, and I can
Indiana. Tell you that I swam in that river.
Ooh, and you're still alive.
Yeah. Living survivor, testament.
Yeah. My high school teacher knew somebody who threw one of those little blocks of sulfur in the Ohio River.
Oh,
Got
really?
in big trouble.
I remember I remember being told by a number of people, actually, the time that the entire river froze and people were just walking back
that was in the
forth.
70s.
Yeah.
Yes. I've seen pictures. It's wild.
Yeah, that's crazy, right?
Wild.
Yeah, that was a really cold winter. But
So
the bridges.
You like the bridges?
I like the bridges.
The Roebling.
Mm-hmm.
Roebling is classic.
You've got like the it's not. I don't think it's called that, but the Big Mac Bridge with the big arches.
They still call it that.
Yeah. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, although they say they always say every year they're gonna replace the Brent Spence, and they never do.
Yeah, it's never gonna happen.
It won't happen until it actually falls into the Ohio River.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think all of those bridges. Last time I looked, they were right before me. They're like, we need to replace the bridges. We need to replace, and they still haven't really.
The Brent Spence Bridge, in case everybody doesn't know, is the one Interstate 75 and 71 travel over, and it goes between Florida and Michigan. You would think somebody would be able to cough up the money to do something for it, but it never happens.
And another fact about the city that most people probably don't know: the Ohio River is actually, most of it is in Kentucky zone.
Yes, 3/4 of it is Kentucky.
Which is totally bizarre, you go a little bit, now I'm in Kentucky.
And then there's that spot by Evansville where part of the stuff that it should be on the Indiana side. It's in Kentucky, and there's a horse race track on it.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, go over to Evansville sometime.
That's wild.
You don't hit the river yet, and you're in Kentucky.
Interesting.
All right, so yeah, now we'll kind of close it out here and sort of talk about what we see happening for Cincinnati as time goes on in the future. And I don't know, it's sort of a mixed bag. I see all these magazines that come out every 2 or 5 years and say it's the new hotspot for young professionals.
I remember in the 90s it was voted the #1 place to live in the United States.
Oh, yes.
I think it was like 94, 95,
yeah.
something. It was like mid-90s.
But, I don't know what to say. There are good places. I very much enjoyed spending time in Hyde Park because I'm a jerk, I've always, my parents' friend has a friend who lives in Mount Lookout, which is a really nice spot, too. But, I don't know. There are parts of it
you don't see coming back. There are parts of it that are just kind of decaying, and other parts that are just really booming, and other parts that are almost in stasis. Right. It's a very interesting mix, and you don't even have to travel very far to get just be in a very different kind of area, you know? Yeah. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I always kind of liked it. It made travel a very interesting experience, Right.
And again, that goes back again to those sort of strong neighborhood identities.
Oh, yeah. Also, another strong, the bus system in Cincinnati is really good.
Yeah, it's been good.
Yeah. It's very expansive and runs on time.
I guess I see Cincinnati as almost a place of dreamers. They have all these big projects like the subway thing that didn't totally take off, the museum center. It's all right as a museum, but it never really hit its peak.
I always wanted to go into those subway tunnels. That always seemed like an interesting thing to go do.
I saw a YouTube video of two guys.
I've seen those too. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's there was the time when Jerry Springer was mayor.
And of course, Cincinnati is the home of Larry Flint. Larry Flint, Hustler.
Oh yes, I forgot about that.
Yeah, the big contention that was going on with that as well. So
my parents' German club also has the old chandeliers from the Playboy mansion that used to be there.
Just to be clear, I don't know if Larry Flint is still living there or not. Probably isn't.
Yes, so my parents' German club is very proud of these old Playboy chandeliers.
Oh, really? From the Playboy mansion
that used to be in. Because they used to have them in every city. Yeah, and
that's wild. Didn't they close most of those down now?
Yeah. There's only like 2 or 3 left. Although the one in Geneva, Wisconsin is still there, I believe.
Yeah, you hear that, everybody? Like Lake Geneva?
Yeah, Lake Geneva, Wisconsin.
Also the birthplace of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes. Not Switzerland, Wisconsin.
That's right.
But yeah, so I don't know, and I hope that going forward that the sort of, I don't know, the East-West and Northern Kentucky, Ohio thing just doesn't become quite as intense as it was sometimes.
I think it's pretty much going to remain the same in terms of that.
Intense,
it's those kind of rivalry, that kind of stuff dies hard, right?
Yeah.
And the schools they foster it, right? Exactly.
Yeah. But that was, and that's again a polar opposite. If you want to go listen to my podcast from 2 weeks ago on episode 2, I said Raleigh had no neighborhood identity because all the schools were magnet schools pretty much, except for a couple. And you see what happens in the contrast when the schools are very strong schools, then there's very strong neighborhood identity.
Oh, yes. It makes a very different dynamic in the entirety of the city. It's crazy. Well, I wouldn't say crazy, but makes for an interesting place to grow up.
So I guess I'll ask you, would you move back tomorrow if you had the opportunity? Cincinnati.
If it was worth my while.
If it was worth your while. I guess if I got paid enough, I would. I guess I don't know if I would move into the city proper, though. I don't even know if I would move back to Florence. I like Florence okay, but it's just growing way too fast, and there just seems to be nothing they can do about it.
No. Florence is booming right now.
Oh, yeah, well, I had a friend who was his family growing up in the area, and he told me that, up until, 95, there was nothing west of the mall.
No, there was nothing there.
And I lived a good mile west of the mall. Now there's stuff 3 miles west of the mall. And it's just it's constantly...
Yeah, it's all farmland and just forested area out that way. And it's getting developed. Because it's been a little while since I've been out there.
Okay, so I lived at the corner of US 42 and Pleasant Valley Roads.
I know where Pleasant Valley Road is.
Yeah,
okay,
so I lived off of that, and my parents' subdivision was built in the 80s, and it was the farthest thing out there at that time.
Oh, wow, okay.
But then, since I lived there, they opened most of this area they called Oakbrook.
Okay.
And that pretty much took up the entire expanse between Hopeful Church Road, that's the road that runs parallel to 75.
Yeah.
Everything between that and 237 has been developed.
Really?
Yeah, like
there really wasn't anything there.
Houses stacked on top of houses.
Wow.
Like
Just
so
the very dense neighborhoods.
So big, they built another high school after I moved away called Cooper.
Gosh.
And that's all its services pretty much. Yeah, when my bus route when I was in high school, my senior year took over an hour. From the high school to loop around.
I kind of have a blank expression on my face. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, so it was just crazy. Like in fact, the Cincinnati Enquirer interviewed us when I was a sophomore or something.
Oh,
I was like, yeah, when I first moved here, none of this was here, and there was like 30 cul-de-sacs, and I don't know when it stops, man. And I feel bad. Is that like a bad sign that like so many people moved across the river from Ohio?
I don't know what to make of that.
Like my parents' friends, they moved from Price Hill over to Oakbrook.
Oh yeah,
yeah, or not Oakbrook. What's that other neighborhood? Meadow Farms or whatever. Who knows? There's
so many neighborhoods in Cincinnati, the greater Cincinnati area.
Right, but the ones on the Kentucky side, it's not the same. They're more the suburban thing I was talking about with Raleigh. But
well, I mean, at least it's not like Newport was back in the 80s. Like the tornado went through at that point. It was like 5 blocks of devastation, $32 worth of damage. That was a bad joke. I apologize to anybody in New York. I know Newport.
New York. One of my they had the Kentucky area mapping conference in Covington 2 times ago, and my friends from Lexington came up, and they were like, "Oh yeah, well, it's really funny because one of them had lived in Anderson Township, but I guess hadn't spent much time in northern Kentucky, and he was there, and my this other coworker there, and they're like." Oh yeah, they took us through Newport to go to NKU for something. And he's like, man, it looks rough there. I was like, oh my god. Well, what part? Well, they took us down 12th Street. I was like, well, there you go.
Okay, that would be why. I like Covington. Covington's got some really great
the Basilica.
Yes. Well, the Basilica. It begins with the M. The big area. I can't remember the name of it.
Mainstrasse.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's doing well.
Yeah,
and
there's lots of festivals there,
it was struggling for a while in other parts of Covington, but they seem to be coming back okay. In fact, 12th Street in Covington's now getting nicer.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Even though Jillian's closed down. Do you remember Jillian's?
I do remember Jillian's.
It closed down when I was in high school.
I never got to go there, but I heard of it.
It was such a wild building. It was 4 floors.
And of course, another interesting little tidbit. There's the strip clubs that are in the Kentucky, but not in there because Covington area was almost saying that gambling was legal there.
That was Newport.
That was Newport. Sorry, yes,
yeah.
In that area right there. So everybody was
do
their business in Cincinnati, and then they'd go to the basic pleasure dome that is Newport.
Newport was known as the Las Vegas of the East.
Mm-hmm.
It's declined substantially in that regard since the 60s. Mm-hmm. I don't really know what they do for Newport. It's crazy, man. Their population's all the way down to 19,000.
Really?
Yeah. Covington's at 41 still, but Newport's it might sink out of the top 10 in Kentucky cities.
It wouldn't surprise me if it's sinking that fast.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Hopefully someone can come on my comments thread and defend Newport. Stand up for honor.
Hey, I like Newport. There's nothing wrong with the town. There's a lot of really good points to it. I'm wondering why the whole area is dying.
It's just dying. I mean, there's one neighborhood.
It is kind of inaccessible because it's like right between the 2 highways there, and it's kind of hard to.
But Bellevue on the other side of 75 is booming.
I lived in Bellevue, actually.
Everybody loves Bellevue. Half my friends from high school moved there at some point.
But it was really inexpensive to live in Bellevue. That's why, and it's right next to the highway.
Actually, it's getting kind of pricey now.
Really?
Yeah, houses start going for $175.
Oh wow,
that's high for Bellevue. But yeah, Bellevue High School was even doing well for a while.
Wow. Okay.
They were winning in sports, getting better grades.
Oh wow.
I don't know. Bellevue's hip and trendy. Watch it not be. This podcast won't age well.
No.
Right.
No. Of course, the second you say that, everything's just going to go, right? Yeah, exactly. Anyway.
When I leave, everything dies. That's the moral of this story. When I leave an area, it plummets.
Keep me informed if you're moving, okay?
Except for Port Washington, it hasn't really plummeted.
Port Washington really hasn't done much of anything.
No, but
I've been there once.
They did. They got a brand new housing development, a brand new museum.
Do they still have the pirate ship?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
That's the big draw.
They have to. They're the Port Washington Pirates.
Right?
It's actually doing quite well, although they're going to take my parents' friend restaurant and make some crazy new 5-floor thing on the lake there. Ooh,
fancy.
I'm getting priced out of my parents' hometown.
Oh gosh, yeah.
You can get a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house there for a small $200K now. When they probably were built for like $40K in the 50s. All right, well, I guess we'll wrap it up here, Robin. Is there anything else great we should mention about Cincinnati? We almost covered everything. Oh, I love the bakeries. I was a big Buskin lover, although Graeter's has stepped up its bakery game significantly.
Graeter's ice cream is probably the one thing that I miss the most. It's kind of it shows up a little bit in Bloomington every now and then. Right. I think I could be able to get it at Kroger. Kroger being a Cincinnati-based company,
right?
But it's hard to find my favorite flavor: black raspberry chip.
Oh, see, I just like the cookies and cream.
Oh, so. That's a good one too, though.
Yeah. So yeah, we pretty much covered it all. If you have any thoughts on Cincinnati, I'm sure at least somebody on Facebook might comment on this one.
Should I end on a song?
You can end on a song. What is this?
No, I shouldn't sing the Cincinnati song. Everybody hates that thing.
Do you know the WKRP song?
Not off the top of my head. Although I did love the song. Not the song, but the show.
Yeah,
in reruns, of course.
I had never seen that show.
Really?
Yeah. And then my parents showed. Then of course we had to see it.
It's definitely a sign of its time.
Yeah, it's very 70s.
Yeah, very 70s.
If you said what, it's more 70s than that 70s show.
Oh, by a long shot. Because it was the 70s.
Which no, in defense of that 70s show, that is what Racine is like.
Mm-hmm. No, Racine area is pretty much like that. Like I said, I was living in Muskego for a while. It's very the same kind of area, and it was almost exactly like that.
Whereas Port Washington is nothing like Step by Step because it was filmed in California. There's big coasters and mountains in the opening shot, and I'm like, what?
I have one last fact. The Springfield Cemetery.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. John Chapman is buried, better known as Johnny Appleseed.
There you go. We'll close it on that one. Thank you all for listening, and we'll tune in next week. Maybe I'll have some more interesting guests on. We'll see. Otherwise, I might have to rant about the French some more. Say goodbye to the fans, Robin.
Bye, everybody.
Check out the Know Your Place podcast on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/knowyourplacepodcast, all one word, or on Facebook at facebook.com/knowyourplacepodcast, all one word. And we will be coming soon to YouTube and iTunes, and maybe another social media platform near you. Special thanks to my wife, Sarah, and Jay Graff for the riff.